Okay, now it's working. Okay, I think we've actually got it. Sorry for the delay, ladies and gentlemen. But this is the second attempt at a stream. And because the game audio was drowning everything out, we're doing Jedi Academy again, and I'm going to be talking about the Jedi Prince series. Hopefully this time you'll actually be able to hear me and what I'm saying. So, let me just... can anyone in the chat perhaps confirm if things are all right? I'm going to do like a bit of a test entry, see if the game noise overwhelms my voice. Then I'll basically do this, set things up. Okay. Yeah, we'll do the... All right, let's see. Here's our little test.
Then Jan punches the weak way right in the...
Can anyone hear me over the game noise, or is it still too loud?
The message is coming from that cargo tram down below.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not surprised. I do genuinely like the Corellian level in Jedi Academy.
You take the tram. I'll take care of these ships. Head towards the front and clear out each car. Keep the enemy in front of you so you don't have to worry about your flank.
It's too loud. Okay, gonna try this again. Testing, testing, testing. Okay, just a little bit too loud. Oh. Take it down just a tad once more. And I think we've actually got it. So before I get into this, in the game, sort of a brief introduction to what exactly the Jedi Prince is and who created it. So, I'm also planning to do this, maybe the stream format for like some of the really long book series like New Jedi Order, depending on how well this is received. So I guess I'll just have to do this and see how you people like it. So, Jedi Prince, very obscure little young adult book series from the very early 90s. I only know of it because when I was in middle school, for whatever reason, the school library had all 6 volumes. And these are like, well, no, volume is very generous because these things are like, each story itself is like barely 90 pages a pop. So you can blitz through them all in one day if you were so inclined. And like I said, young adult, well, no, young adult's kind of stretching it. No, that's in fact being completely dishonest. They are explicitly written for very, very small children. So, children's fiction. They were written by a husband and wife team, Paul and Hollis Davids. The former apparently a Princeton grad, according to their little bios in the back of each volume. Let's see, Paul mostly he was a graduate from the American Film Institute as well. And he mostly co-wrote the TV film Roswell for Showtime. The one with Kyle MacLachlan and Martin Sheen. Never heard of it before, but apparently some people are aware of it, and it's fairly well known. Hollis was mostly a psychologist, though she got a few executive positions at various studios, namely Universal Pictures, where she was vice president of special projects, and Columbia, same position. But I have no idea what vice president of special projects means, so for all I know, she just basically counted beans. You know how most administrative positions often seem to be, especially the ones where the titles have no clear indication of what the job is. Apart from the fact they've got a son and a daughter, there's not much else to say about them. There's not much. I couldn't find much else about them prior to the Jedi Prince. Oh, we've got some guys in the chat. Let's just check a second. Can any of you tell me if you can hear me clearly or if the game is too loud? Please say so in the live chat. Hopefully I'm getting it right this time. While I go on about the illustrators. Because the only thing that I would say to recommend these books is the art. The cover art was done by, well, the book says it's called Benton Jew is his name, but in reality, it was Drew Struzan. Don't know why it's credited as Benton Jew, if that was like just a name he went by, but then again, like the Benton Jew bio talks about a completely different guy. But Drew Struzan is pretty famous for his movie posters. He pretty much did the movie poster of almost every prominent film from the 80s through the 90s. Pretty much the Star Wars films, anything Spielberg did. He also did a lot of the cover art for a lot of Star Wars books going forward, including this one. And I will say, it is kind of a shame, because while these books are, well, these are pretty bad books, but it's not in the way that I remember it being bad. When I first read these books, I felt that even as a middle schooler, these were pretty stupid. Okay, good. The sound is all right. But that was like many years ago. This is the first time I've revisited them since then. And looking at these books now, I realize that it's not that these were really dumb, although there are some pretty dumb ideas. It's that these were clearly just written for small children and that there just isn't much to appeal to someone who isn't. So this, my critique of these books are not going to be nearly as mean-spirited as I was expecting them to be. Even so, though, Drew Struzan's art is kind of wasted on these stories. And, look up, say, The Glove of Darth Vader or Prophets of the Dark Side, or basically just The Jedi Prince on social media. That and, Drew Struzan, his covers really do look like classic Star Wars movie posters. And again, it just feels a waste. The other illustrator, because there are interior illustrations, which I guess makes sense, this is a kid's book and you would want to help them stay engaged, was done by Carl Kessel. He mostly did a bunch of DC work, Superman, the world's finest and such, but he also did some work for Marvel and 1 or 2 projects for Image and Dark Horse. So, now that that's sort of the intro out of the way, let us begin with the very first of these little, incredibly short 6-book series, The Glove of Darth Vader. That's sort of a thing. I've always liked the effect that they have it that you hold the lightsaber in front of your face, like you are running into the wind. That's really good stuff. A nice bit of touch fitting the atmosphere. Okay, so, The Glove of Darth Vader, very first entry in the series. It's set roughly around the year 5 ABY. Now, for those of you who aren't all that familiar with the old Expanded Universe timeline, BBY is obviously... BBY and ABY are before and after the Battle of Yavin. The Battle of Endor, which occurred in Return of the Jedi, is 4 ABY. So 5 ABY puts this story at 1 year later. And the thing about the Expanded Universe iteration of the Star Wars post-Return of the Jedi is the idea that even though Palpatine and Vader are dead, the Empire doesn't die so easily. It's a bit of a long, slow process, as opposed to just an instantaneous collapse. And for pretty much the next few years in the universe timeline, and in like several book series, Jedi Academy, the Courtship, and I mean the book trilogy, not the game, the Courtship of Princess Leia, the X-Wing trilogy, well no, not trilogy, but the X-Wing book cycle, the Rogue Squadron series, they are all set in this period where, for the first couple of years post-Endor, the Empire just descends into warlordism. Various Moffs and Admirals and other high-ranking Imperial types are just determined to carve off a piece of the Empire for themselves and create their own little petty kingdoms. And this is actually what kind of gives the Rebel Alliance and later on the New Republic the edge in the first few years. Sorry, hard to game and talk at the same time. Jumping in my jumps. Because the Empire is so divided among themselves. Sniper. Hang on a second. Mouse cord. Problematic? There we go. Okay. And in fact, occasionally you would get someone like Thrawn who would try to unify the Empire under some kind of singular leadership. Because pretty much, otherwise the Rebels and later New Republic just played divide and conquer with the Empire, or the Imperial Remnant, as they came to be known. So, 5 ABY, we're 1 year past Endor, and essentially that's sort of what sets the plot of the Jedi Prince in motion. The fact that the Empire at this point, some among the Empire leadership, desperately want a centralizing figure, a unifying figure to bring the Empire back together so that they can still have a chance at beating the Rebel Alliance and, bringing the whole galaxy back under the old iron fist of Imperial rule. And the Rebels get wind of this. So, The Glove of Darth Vader begins with Luke Skywalker having R2-D2 and C-3PO go undercover to Kessel, the famous spice mining world. Because apparently there's going to be a big meeting of the Empire's leading figures. And they figure by disguising 3PO and R2 as like droids that are from Kessel, they might be able to listen in on that. Oh, drat. And now it's a bit finicky for me. That's what I get.
And Jan punches the weak way right in the...
Got some thermoses here so that I don't have to walk away and wet my throat like I had the first time.
The message is coming from that cargo trap down below.
Disguised as essentially as mining droids, although how on earth you would make a protocol droid look like he's fit for mining, I have no idea. There are quite a few sort of silly things in these books that you really would have to be a small child to miss, especially if you're in any way familiar with Star Wars. But the droids
You
get
take the
there,
tram.
and they
I'll take care
infiltrate
of
the
these
meeting.
ships.
And this is
Head
one
towards
thing
the
you have
front
to
and
keep
clear out
in
each
mind
car.
is that
Keep
this
the
is in the
enemy
early
in front of you
90s. This
so
is
you don't have to worry
like
about
the
your
expanded
flank.
universe has been around for a long time. Like, you can argue the earliest iterations were Splinter of the Mind's Eye and the first comics from old Marvel in the 70s. But it really was around the 90s where, particularly like the mid-90s especially, where Star Wars and Lucasfilm especially, they wanted to really place a lot more emphasis on material that was not the films, or directly connected to the films, because by that point, Return of the Jedi was almost a decade old, and the interest in the franchise was waning. So it was actually around the 90s where a lot of inconsistencies started being addressed, and a lot of stuff that you could have just gotten away with or hand-waved away in the 70s and in the early 80s would not have flown, did not fly with them anymore. There was an attempt to create a greater sense of continuity. But this is early 90s, so they're not quite like that in The Jedi Prince. So it's not entirely Paul and Hollis David's fault here. And I bring this up because the Kessel that they describe is not like the Kessel in later books. Kessel, in most of the books, comics that came afterwards, is very much just a barren, almost airless rock. It barely has atmosphere. And of course, the whole thing is just the infamous spice mines. Oop, missed the jump. The infamous spice mines. That famous one-off line that 3PO mentioned when they were in the Sandcrawler in A New Hope. They'll be sent to the spice mines of Kessel, smashed into who knows what. In The Jedi Prince, on the other hand, though, the Rodian Sniper. Always got to remember to prioritize the Rodian Snipers in Jedi Academy. The castle that they describe in The Glove of Darth Vader has, like, green fields and forests, even. And that's like, no. Especially not if you're trying, given that this is an Imperial world, and you're trying to sell the idea that the Empire are just evil in every possible way. God damn it. I need to, like, that's it. I'm going to save every time I get to the next cart. Yeah, that's the plan.
And Jan
definitely.
punches the weak way right in the...
Can anyone hear me? We're under attack.
It's a bit loud still?
The message is coming
try
from
to
that
address
cargo tram down
but
below.
it's like almost completely down, but let's see. Well, let's wait till the cutscene ends. But yeah, so Kessel, the droids do sneak in on the meeting, and here they find that there is a new guy claiming to be the rightful heir to Palpatine, and thus the guy who will lead the Empire, and is this three-eyed man named Trioculus.
I'll take care of these ships.
He's got one eye a third eye in the middle of his forehead.
Head towards the front and clear out each car.
Let's see,
Keep the enemy in front of you so
Mr.
you
Ryan
don't have to worry about your
Pringle.
flank.
Let me check the sounds. Yeah, that's about as low as I can make, like, the in-game sound without completely erasing. So let me first save here so I don't have to go through the cutscene every single time I die. Alrighty then. So yes, Trioculus. And he's being backed for this position as head of the Empire by this group called the Central Committee of Grand Moffs, led by a fellow by the name of Grand Moff Hissa, who basically looks like an ordinary guy, except he's got pointy ears and pointy teeth. So, at best, he's near human, which is kind of unusual for a high-ranking Imperial officer, but then again, we must recall this is the early 90s. They hadn't yet started leaning into the idea that the Empire really are just Nazis in space. So, the early 90s, you were not going to have something like Warlord Zinj, for example, and the really Mengele screwed up stuff he gets up to with aliens and stuff. And of course, the prejudice against Thrawn for being Chiss, that doesn't exist just yet. This predates a lot of the revival, I guess you would call it the renaissance of the Star Wars franchise, which mostly occurs in the expanded universe. But anyway, Trioculus lays claim to, essentially, leadership of the Empire. Nope, save again. I don't want to have to restart everything. And of course, there are a few challengers. And they are an admiral and an Imperial guardsman. And Trioculus basically counters their challenge by saying, well, I have what he literally calls it, the lightning power of the dark side. And this is here where I must address kind of the probably the biggest weakness of the Jedi Prince series, and it is the fact that it's hammy, but not in an enjoyable way. And the main reason why the ham doesn't quite work, because like you can have bits of cheese and ham in Star Wars. You know, Princess Leia, as whole dialogue with Tarkin is a classic, and when they first meet, is a classic example of this. You can have that, but the problem is all the characters, including the ones that are from the films, the original trilogy characters, are just not written very interesting. They are all very bland. And you kind of need to convey a certain personality in order to sell hammy lines. Ah, so cool. You always gotta love that about Jedi Academy. I maintain Jedi Outcast is still the superior entry overall in the Jedi Knight game series, but there's no denying Academy is by far the better game to play. Outcast has gameplay is a little weaker, but it does have a much better story. So overall, Outcast is the superior package. Okay, so Trioculus, and he basically says this line, the lightning power of the dark side. I've inherited this from my father, the lightning power of the dark side. He's claiming to be Palpatine's son. But the issue with that is, Trioculus, like all the characters in this game, oops, there's a Rodian sniper, he's very bland, but he's also trying to, but he says these lines and he expects you to take him seriously. And it's like, you can't, because apart from the fact that he's the bad guy and he's generically evil, he has no personality to him. But basically, the rebels now know that there's a new guy in town claiming to be the Emperor's heir. And in fact, like I said, he claims to be Palpatine's son. And in fact, apparently, news to me, but but apparently it's been well known among the rebel leadership for some time, that there was at least rumor that Palpatine had a three-eyed son. But up until this point, the Empire leadership has denied his existence. So why are they admitting this now? Well, the fairly obvious answer is they're desperate. They need a guy to take over, to unify the Empire, put an end to the warlordism, because really it's their only way that they will have a chance of regaining their prominence. Second. And in fact, as it turns out, Trioculus isn't even really Palpatine's son. Palpatine does have a three-eyed son, but it's not him. And the reason why this is the case is because Palpatine's real three-eyed son, named Triclops, so yeah, real creative there with the naming, is deemed insane by Imperial leadership. They just do not think he would be very good. And that's mainly because they say he's insane, but in reality, Triclops is a pacifist. Because the Empire are bad guys, warmongering bad guys, that counts as insanity. And they are certain, almost fell off, that he would lead the Empire to ruin. And thus, they figured, well, we need somebody, anybody, to assume Palpatine's mantle. And so, well, there's this Trioculus guy who's sort of the chief overseer of all of our mining slaves on Kessel. Let's have him step into the shoes. Oh yes, he's claimed to be Palpatine's son, and trust me, that's not even the craziest, this most hilariously awful thing about this book series. Just you wait. So, but what Trioculus clearly needs something to legitimize him. Otherwise, he's going to have people constantly challenging him. He needs something that can grant him legitimacy as the rightful leader of the Empire. And there's this other faction in the Empire at this point called the Prophets of the Dark Side. We'll get to them in the second book. Don't worry, we'll get to them all today. These are very short books. It's 90 pages a pop, as I said. And according to them, there's a prophecy where it goes as follows. Let me just quickly bring up the text. After Palpatine's fiery death, another leader soon comes to command the Empire. And on his right hand, he does wear the glove of Darth Vader. You know, cue the Family Guy meme. So, and yes, a pacifist three-eyed son named Triclops. No, I have no idea what Mr. and Mrs. Davids were smoking. And I'm not sure, I don't know, they don't strike me as the kind of people who would be onto that sort of stuff from what little I know about them. They seem like just pretty standard academic family types. Like I said, they've got 2 children. By now, they'd be fully grown at this point. Probably only a few years younger than you or I. You know, assuming we're talking about people in like late 20s, early 30s. Oh, gotta get back up there somehow. So, the glove of Darth Vader. That's the prophecy. The prophets of the dark side say that the only person who can lead the Empire is the one who wears the glove of Darth Vader. Now, you might be asking, any sensible person will be asking, that makes no sense. Vader was, one hand was cut off by Luke in the final duel in Return of the Jedi, and presumably it was blown up with the second Death Star. The rest of him was burned on a funeral pyre. And in fact, you know, we saw this in the second to last scene of Return of the Jedi. So the question is, how does that work? Well, turns out, big shock, the right-hand glove of Vader's was made to be indestructible. It was imbued with the power of the dark side. And so, it definitely survived the second Death Star's destruction, trust me, bro. And so, that Troculus has his opening. If he can find the glove and possess it, the rest of the Empire will have no choice but to take him seriously. Oop, another Rodian sniper. God, those things are just so irritating. So, that's what he needs to do. He's got to find the glove. And in fact, right after the big meeting where he puts himself forward as the rightful heir of Palpatine, he has a meeting with the Moffs, and he literally says, just get me the glove of Darth Vader. Don't care what you do, how you do it, I need that damned glove. And so they'll start looking. But of course, these are really short books, so there's not a lot of time given to the actual search. Like, almost immediately, someone in Troculus's circle finds it. But we'll have to come to that later. Darn it, I gotta go back and retrace my steps to get back up there. So, we have to cut back to the Rebels for a bit, and I gotta break out the text again, because I want to make sure I got this name right, this acronym. So yeah, obviously 3PO and R2 get back to Luke. Basically, they have to, Luke has to come in and rescue them from Kessel, because stormtroopers find the little pod they crashed to Kessel on. And so they make the report. They now know the name and face of the man who is planning to take over the Empire and cause trouble for our heroes. Drat, where is the name of this damned thing? They're not yet sure at this point if they've transitioned into from the Rebel Alliance to the New Republic just yet. But it's kind of implied to be somewhere in the middle of it. Yes, here we are. And so a lot of these missions that Luke and company end up going on is for this organization within the Rebel Alliance called the Senate's Planetary Intelligence Network, SPIN for short. And, like, it's interesting, and, you know, you can tell this is the sort of thing like, ooh, acronyms, that's cool. That's something that, you know, a 6 or 5-year-old would find really interesting and exciting. But it's like, I don't know how many, I'm surely people know that spin is like a slang term for bias in journalism. So it's like interesting, but like, are you really trying to engender trust in an institution that's named for, whose name sort of invokes a kind of dishonesty? Sniper. Oop. Oh, darn it. Got it line up just right. There you go. All Rhodian snipers must die. Alrighty then. Okay, stream's still in good condition. I was having a few problems earlier, that's why there were delays. So now they know, and of course, almost immediately, like I said, one of Trioculus's goons somewhere finds the glove, and so almost immediately he just goes to get it. Now, another thing that sort of tells you that this is the 90s, the early 90s specifically. Yep, stop that bomb.
No, that wasn't so bad.
Ooh, drat.
Mission accomplished.
Bad news, Jake. The tram is speeding up. I think they're going to ram it into the station. You have to get to the control room and stop that train.
What? Remember how, you know, the 90s were the decade of Captain Planet and Fern Gully and all that heavy-handed environmentalist messaging? Well, it seems Jedi Prince is not immune to this. And like in almost all but one of these books, in almost every, all but the last one, there is some kind of environmental subplot, usually where the Empire's doing something worthy of a Captain Planet villain. Die already. And the rebels, of course, have to stop them. So, the environmental theme of this little ditty is save the whales. I'm not even kidding. The story takes place on the rest of the story takes place on Mon Calamari, Admiral Akbar's homeworld. No mention of the Quarren, though, but I guess, you know, again, this is early days. They hadn't yet developed the idea of the very, very antagonistic history between the Quarren and the Mon Calamari. So there's no mention of the squid heads. But the thing that they do focus on are these things called whaledons on Mon Calamari. And they really, the design is just so lazy. They're just humpback whales with nostrils instead of blowholes. And you can confirm this by looking at illustrations. I'm sure, like on Wikipedia, they should at least have one illustration of what a whaledon looks like. And it's literally just a humpback whale with nostrils instead of a blowhole. And it's like, there are like designs later on in the illustrations that are far more creative than this. So it's kind of disappointing, because I think of Star Wars and creative creatures and aliens and stuff. I always think back to the Mos Eisley Cantina. Yeah, so yes, the theme of, the environmental theme for Glove of Darth Vader, the subplot is save the whales. Yes, indeed. Apparently, not for blubber, that's apparently not a thing, but apparently whaledon meat is highly prized as a delicacy. And in fact, in the meeting where Trioculus is like, you know, harassing the Moffs, telling them, you know, get me the Glove of Darth Vader, there's sort of a preamble where they're just snacking on whaledon steaks. And it's all played up like these guys are like Captain Planet villains. Honestly, what kind of Captain Planet villain would these guys be? Hoggish Greedly or Loot and Plunder? Those are the only ones whose names I recall. Anybody else can recall any of those Captain Planet villain names? Ooh god, Rhodian Sniper, must die, must die, must die. There we go. Ooh, almost fell. Okay, so now what does all this have to do with the Glove of Darth Vader? Well, This lackey of Troculus's, a guy named Captain Dunwell, discovers the glove of Darth Vader on Mon Calamari. And, he puts in the report. Now, to their credit, the Davids do try to explain how that could possibly be. Again, this is before they really started focusing on a continuity thing within the expanded universe, but even then, it was... And you understand that, Mon Calamari and Endor are light years apart. How on earth could the glove of Darth Vader had ended up there in, only a single standard year?
That was too close.
Great work, Jake.
Well, the excuse that they come up with, and it's not implausible, is basically a black hole. Now, that carries its own problems, but I'll get to those in due time. But essentially, it's the idea that the glove of Darth Vader, along with the bit of wreckage that it was in, got sucked into a black hole, passed through it, and then somehow landed on Mon Calamari. And, it's under the sea because it's an ocean world. And so, that's where Troculus has to go to get it.
The scepter Jaden saw was somehow used to drain the residual force power from the Masasi temple.
Drain the force?
Excuse me.
How can anyone do that?
Oh man, just looking at the cutscene, one of the human students has a man bun.
Those people Jaden saw.
My God, there's some surprisingly funny stuff when you look at the old material in retrospect. Anyway, now of course Luke and R2 and 3PO and stuff, and Admiral Akbar, they're on Mon Calamari mostly because the Empire is causing problems there. They don't yet know exactly about the glove of Darth Vader, or let alone the fact that Troculus is looking for it or that he's found it. And so they go to. There's a place on Mon Calamari called the Domed City of Aquarius, and obnoxiously is always referred to as the Domed City of Aquarius. You apparently just can't call it Aquarius in this series. And again, this does kind of show you how still so very nebulous the Star Wars lore of the universe was, because it's kind of established by the late 90s, early 2000s that, again, the Quarren live below the ocean surface because they're like squid. They live in the dark depths. The Mon Calamari live near to the surface in big floating cities. By contrast, though, they kind of describe the Dome City of Aquarius, because again, you gotta say it that way, as the only city that is both above and below the water. I'm not sure if they've even established they've established that Mon Calamari is a fully ocean planet by this point. But I don't think they've fully established the whole floating city thing, because the floating cities in Mon Calamari, they are mostly below water. They're just near to the surface, or even in some cases above the surface. But the Dome City of Aquarius is spoken of as if it's the only one. Okay, so Hoth, really do love this level. I praised this a good deal in my formal video on Jedi Academy, but they really went to great lengths, Raven Software, to really making it look like you are seeing the set of The Empire Strikes Back. They did the same with Bespin in Jedi Outcast, but for some reason, despite all the Easter eggs and references to all kinds of previous Star Wars material in this game, there's no reference to the Truce at Bakura and the Bakura level, and that always disappoints me in some way.
Probably cover more distance with one of those consoles.
Yeah, well, like that. P. And, there we are. Alrighty. Gun down any Imperials I find. So, yes. So this ties into the theme of Save the Whales, as you might expect. Oops, apparently that doesn't quite work. Too high. And the whole reason that our heroes are on Mon Calamari is that apparently somehow, despite Mon Calamari being a member world of the Rebel Alliance and later the New Republic, the Empire apparently still has a foothold there. Specifically, they have a facility for processing any whalodons that they capture and kill. They have Captain Dunwell, Troculus's lackey, has a special ship that basically sucks up the whalodons, as well as any kind of ocean water and any other stuff that's in there along with them. and they're brought to this facility, and apparently, despite, again, this is before they really went into the Empire being xenophobic, the Whalodon Processing Center is mostly manned by Aqualish. Ponda Baba from the Mos Eisley Cantina. Ah, Wampa time.
I don't want to hurt you.
More speed. Okay. So, our heroes go there because apparently the Whalodons are at least semi-sentient, and the leader of this species, a creature called Leviathor, who's a white whale, so bit of a obvious Moby Dick reference, and basically goes to the Dome City of Aquarius and basically sings like a humpback whale style song of lament for the suffering of his people and how they are constantly just being hunted for just a luxury cuisine by Imperial scumbags. Die, Killjoy. And apparently the Mon Calamari can understand Whalodon, and so basically Akbar is like, I vow to help your people, Leviathor. And, Luke decides to help out because, of course he would. That part of him, at least, is completely in character. And so, along with the two droids, they go under the ocean, and they basically find Leviathor right about the time that he's being... Well, no, shortly before this, they actually stumble across Trioculus and co. as they find the actual bit of wreckage that contains the glove of Darth Vader. Now, I said earlier that the in-universe excuse that the Davids give for how on earth the glove got to Mon Calamari from Endor was that it went through a black hole. Now, obviously Star Wars is science fantasy, so a lot of stuff can't be relied on to be, you're not getting the kind of hard sci-fi of The Expanse. That's just not a thing. Never has been, never will be. But it's still science fiction. There are some parts of Star Wars that do acknowledge like real world physics, like how laser bolts from a blaster pistol burn instead of make you bleed out. That's actually a mistake that Davids make in a later book. And another thing that they get wrong here is that is black holes. Now, black holes in Star Wars do work as black holes, as the layman's understanding of how black holes work. You get sucked in past the event horizon, and whatever it is gets just crushed down into like almost this minuscule thing by the immense gravity. And there are black holes in Star Wars, like even in like the Solo movie, Solo: A Star Wars Story. I believe they do feature the Maw Cluster, the famous cluster of black holes that sit right along the Kessel Run. Yeah. But so the thing is this, even if the glove of Darth Vader is indestructible, as they say it was made to be, even then, the wreckage of the Death Star that it came along with, by rights, should have been crushed around the glove. It should be like this tiny, ultra-dense, like, ball of, or lump of metal. Or lump of metal. And by rights, it should be just impossible to recover because it's just too heavy. There's no way you could lift it. Because like the wreckage described is just a massive hunk of twisted metal, like big enough to be like a shipwreck almost. And so there's no way that you could move that without heavy equipment. No, the Maw Cluster is not near. They're a black hole near Endor, or a wormhole. Yeah, and that's never mentioned in the lore. So as far as I know, it doesn't exist. Because again, and this part, I don't entirely fault the Davids. I fault them for not, taking into account how black holes work with the glove. But I don't fault them for their, having them put a black hole near to Endor. Because again, this is before the lore of the Star Wars universe began to solidify. Really, up through the 70s and 80s, it was anything that wasn't in the movie was just this nebulous thing, very ill-defined. But, you know, that's not surprising. For like a franchise, for the franchise that early in its history. There we go. Thank you. Or dying. Took a bit long there with that one slash. Okay, so now they identify the wreckage and they confirm it's the Death Star. The Empire does, because they basically check the metal composition and they basically say, "Oh well, this metal composition matches exactly with the manufacture of the Death Star," because apparently they use some pretty unique alloys to create the Death Star. And of course, you know, Trioculus goes out in like a little diving suit and he recovers the glove right around the time that Luke, Akbar, and the droids stumble onto them. And this is right after that they spot Leviathor, because they went out in Dunwell's ship. And this is the special ship that captures Whaledons for being sent to the processing facility for dismemberment, butchery. Alright, gotta get that. And if it weren't for Heel, I would be dead several times over. And so the vessel takes them all back. Well, no, I keep skipping ahead. I keep losing my track of it. Our heroes get sucked up along with Leviathor and the other Whaledons, and apparently a giant squid-like alien aboard the special Whaledon catching ship. And that's how they end up in the Whaledon processing facility. Their vessel is like really small, so the Empire doesn't notice them at first. God damn it. And basically, it's all about, once they're inside, they figure, well, we're here, we may as well try to sabotage the whole thing, so that at least the Empire can't, you know, poach Whaledons. Because again, the environmental subplot is save the whales. Ooh. Nice blow up. And push. Okay. There's like a brief fight with Trioculus and Dunwell. And basically they do set up to blow. Trioculus and Grand Moff Hissa escape, leaving Dunwell to die. Of course, because one, he's a bad guy, and two, Dunwell accidentally overheard a conversation between Hissa and Trioculus, where they basically admit that, yeah, Trioculus is not, in fact, Palpatine's actual son. And he's just faking it. So obviously, he knows too much to be left alive. And actually, yeah, I forgot to mention this earlier, but the main reason why the sort of arrangement is that in return for Trioculus being the new Emperor, he will share power with the Committee of Grand Moffs. And that's why the Grand Moffs are backing him. Basically, look, we need a leader, and you know, we would very much like to have a prominent place in the new Empire. You help us, we'll basically put you in the top spot. That's basically the deal. But you know, they do both the good guys and the bad guys escape. Trioculus has the glove of Darth Vader. He has a brief altercation with Luke before they escape, and you know, he vows vengeance in stereotypical Saturday morning cartoon villain style. And that ends the glove of Darth Vader. Like I said, it's fairly standard, and like I said, these stories are all very, very short, so I'll be able to get through all of them in just this one stream very easily. So that's the glove of Darth Vader. Next is the Lost City of the Jedi. So now that Trioculus has the glove, he now needs to just basically get confirmation. And so he needs to go to the Prophets of the Dark Side and basically get their dark blessing. And I kid you not, that's literally how they say it. It's all the ham and cheese of the 1980s Flash Gordon movie, but with none of the material, fun, or drama that can make you that can really sell that kind of hamminess. it's also very bland, even as they try to take themselves seriously. So, Hissa and Troculus go to a place called Space Station Scardia. And this is basically the home base of the Prophets of the Dark Side. Now, the Prophets of the Dark Side, as their name implies, they're basically evil prophets. Their whole deal is to predict the future in favor of evil. And the thing about the prophets is that it's never confirmed whether or not they're Force users. But it's kind of implied that they're not, because it is always mentioned that even if Supreme Prophet Kadan's prophecies do not come true by themselves, the prophets have a can employ a very small but effective army of agents and saboteurs to make sure that the prophecies come true, thus ensuring their credibility and their power. Now, Supreme Prophet Kadan is kind of a major villain alongside Troculus, and he is always described as a black-bearded dwarf. In fact, a lot of the prophets are dwarfs for some reason, not like fantasy dwarfs, but like really just human dwarfs. I guess you might call them little people. Though I've always found that kind of even more demeaning somehow. But anyway, they're like the one exception is like the only other named prophet character, a guy named Jedgar, who's like 8 feet tall, so he could do basketball. But apparently most of the other prophets are either normal size or they are dwarfs like Kadan. So Troculus and Hissa meet Kadan. Basically, Troculus shows him the glove, saying, "Look, I've got the proof. You now must acknowledge me and confirm me in my position as the new supreme leader of the Empire. I fulfilled your little prophecy. I have the glove." And, Kadan, he clearly doesn't like it, but he basically reluctantly gives Troculus his dark blessing. But he gives Troculus a warning that the Jedi Prince will destroy him, unless Troculus can destroy him first. And of course, not exactly something that Troculus would be keen on hearing. Because, he figured his problems, at least in terms of leadership, would be over if he just finds the glove. But, there's always problems. Leadership is never as fun as it sounds. Oh, it can be fun, but it's just never as fun as it sounds, because there's always new problems and new responsibilities. And so, luckily, Kadan knows exactly, he doesn't know exactly where the Jedi Prince can be found, but he knows the planet. And he says, Yavin 4. And so, we cut to the titular Jedi Prince, Ken. This little kid who lives in this underground city, the lost city of the Jedi. And apparently it's just him, his pet Muka, which is an actually genuinely creative design. It's like a little dog, but with the head and feathers of a parrot and 4 bat ears. So, an appropriately weird Star Wars alien design, who basically is his pet, and droids. Apart from Ken and his pet, it's just nothing but droids. Apparently, it was the Jedi established this city long ago, and it's mostly there to be sort of a backup library and data center. It's got this massive supercomputer that contains pretty much all information about all things in the Star Wars universe, and it is constantly up to date. So Ken knows about the rebellion because the droids know about it. They know about the war. They know about the death of Palpatine, the victory of the Rebel Alliance, and basically Ken is he's almost like an insert for a Star Wars fan, because he basically hero worships, Luke and Han and Lando and Leia and all the other Rebel heroes, like pretty much any little kid that is the target audience of these series. But he's obviously very bored. He's lived his whole life in this underground city with nothing but droids, and he's never been allowed outside. Now, his past is a complete mystery. All he knows is that someone in brown Jedi robes dropped him off at the Lost City when he was a little baby. He doesn't remember his parents. The only thing that he has that has any kind of clue to his origins is this weird little silver necklace that's like a half sphere. Here. Drat. Gotta find a way to... There. Let's... There we go. Let's see if I can toss a thermal detonator in there. There we go. I'm getting slightly... I'm still a filthy casual, but I am slowly but surely improving. If I can just figure out how to get through this. Anyway, but, you know, the story has it that, of course, today is the day that Ken decides to sneak out of the Lost City. So he basically takes this little elevator thing, manages to get all the way up to the surface, into the jungles of Yavin 4. And there he meets this friendly alien called Baji, who is a Hodin. He's basically, imagine a very, very tall, thin, green guy with dreadlocks, but they're like vines. Baji doesn't really appear much in any other... even in this little series. He's mostly just a one-off character. But the funny thing is that he speaks in these weird little rhyming couplets most of the time. And the thing about the Hodin, and this does become relevant to the plot later on, is that they are very good healers. They are experts in medicine. And in fact, he's out in the woods collecting rare plants. So, this is Ken's little plotline. Meanwhile, Luke is still brooding over, you know, meeting Troculus, this man who is now claiming leadership of the Empire, and his promise to one day destroy him. Ooh, bit disorientating. And Luke has and so one night he has this vision of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he basically tells him that you must find the lost city of the Jedi. And he shows him a vision of the secret entrance, this little green stone wall in which there is a passageway through. Now, of course, you remember, Yavin 4 is a jungle world. And like yeah, let me check something. The date. Copyright. Yeah, 1982. So this is 3 years before Tom Veitch and Kevin Anderson wrote the Tales of the Jedi comic. So this is before they established sort of the backstory of Yavin 4, of how this is where Nagasado went to ground after he was defeated in the Great Hyperspace War, and thus and built all the Masasi temples there that the rebels use as their base up until the Battle of Yavin. Turn around. Come on. Stormtroopers. Ugh, annoying. Grief. There we go. Ugh, gets in the way of things. But yeah, there's still they haven't yet established where the temples on Yavin 4 come from, all the architecture and stuff. And so Luke goes out to find the lost city, and in fact he discovers Ken and Baji shortly after they meet one another. But of course, shortly after, because again, these are very short books, so there's not exactly a lot of time for detail. Well, and so right around this time, Trioculus shows up. Because again, he is now obsessed with the prophecy. Let's see. Hold on, there's actually one other thing I think that was established here. Let me just quickly check the text. Oh yes, one other thing that's established here is before Troculus arrives in Yavin 4. He basically tries to, as this weird little droid bomb, to attack the rebels while they're in the meeting of a spin meeting. That's just such a weird acronym to go with, spin, for the good guys anyway. And he sees Princess Leia, and of course immediately decides that he wants her. But this again becomes relevant in a later book. Ooh. No, thank you. So yeah, Tronculus has arrived on Yavin 4. Of course, a planet's a big place to look for, and Kadan was able to tell him like which continent it was on, the Lost City is on. But even then, a continent is big. So Tronculus basically decides, well, screw it, just burn it all down. We'll burn down the forest, then we'll basically look through the wastes, and then, we'll see where the entrance is. Because, surely that will survive the fire. So, first, the Glove of Darth Vader, the environmental subplot was save the whales. This time, for the Lost City of the Jedi, it's save the rainforest. That other great cause celeb of 90s environmentalism. It's literally like, it's like that bit from George Carlin. Save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. Yeah. George Carlin is still very deeply missed. But anyway, save the rainforest. That is now the theme of the subplot. And it's always the bad guys doing this, so they're bad. They're burning down the rainforest. How horrible. Yeah, and I just think about like Captain Planet. Every episode, I think, usually ended with like the moral thing where they're talking about pick up litter, don't pollute, and you want to help the rainforests or save the whales, write a letter to your congressman. To end deforestation. As if the United States Congress has influence over the policies of South American countries like Brazil. Well, actually, no. God, maybe given what we know about the CIA and stuff, they probably do. But yeah, save the rainforest. Write a letter to your congressman. Write a letter to your congressman on paper, which is made from trees. Yeah. Way to go, Captain Planet. You've just been a boon. You were probably a boon to the paper industry. Anyway, so basically, Tronculus starts burning down the forest, and it's around this time that he starts to come down really weird. He starts feeling bad. His vision is failing him, and he starts feeling really sick. Of course, as this is all going on, Ken and Luke manage to escape by going underground into the Lost City of the Jedi. The droid caretakers are not very pleased because, their job was to watch over Ken, and he was not supposed to go to the surface until he reached his 20th year. I'm not even going to bother naming the droids because they are all just practically non-entities. They're not really characters. Let's see. But anyway, after Ken and Luke go underground, they take refuge there. Oops, hit force speed instead of force heal. Drat. The Empire discovers Baji, and they bring him aboard. And basically, because they know that as a Hodin, he might be able to help Tronculus, whatever is wrong with him. And basically, Baji, in his weird rhyming way, says, "It's the glove, man. It's not working." Well, no, the glove is basically rejecting you. And in fact, when they take it off, Tronculus's right hand is all covered in blisters and withered, and it's almost like it's starting to decompose. So, really nasty stuff. The dark side does not like him. Yeah, I completely forgot to mention it in the Glove of Darth Vader section, but yeah, Tronculus is not force sensitive. That whole force lightning trick that he did to kill the two guys who questioned him when he did his whole "I have the lightning power of the dark side," it was these special implants in his fingers that generate electricity. Basically to sell the idea that he is Palpatine's son. That's the whole thing. It's all a big con job. So Tronculus decides, okay, fine, whatever. Hissa, make me a replica of the glove so that, I can wear it. Because, I gotta have the symbol. If it gets out that the glove itself rejects me, I will lose legitimacy, and our plan to take over the Empire is just in the garbage. And then, he asked Baji, well, what's the cure for my sight? At this point, he's completely lost the vision in all three of his eyes. And Baji says, well, I have these seeds from this incredibly rare plant. Problem is, your goons are burning down the forest, so, including my hut, by the way, which has all of those seeds that you're going to need. And so, you can tell it's clearly like the environmental theme. See, the bad guys suffer the consequences of their lack of regard for the environment. Trioculus has this big villainous no, and he basically sends desperate orders to stop burning down the rainforest. But by then it's too late. The flames are consuming Baji's hut. But so desperate is he that by this point like Baji gave him a few of those seeds, so he's able to at least see. But he's going to need to take them on a regular basis if he's going to recover from the damage the glove has done to him. And so he runs out into the burning hut to retrieve the seeds. He actually succeeds, but at the cost of some not so fetching burn scars covering almost his entire face. So that's pretty much it for Trioculus. He basically, he's burnt up, but he's got the seeds. He can at least recover from the damage done by the glove, and he can at least, with his new fake one, he can maintain the facade that he is the rightful heir of Palpatine. Oh, couldn't save the Tauntaun in time. I always fail to save the Tauntaun in time. I can at least avenge him. Anywho. Ooh. Now, the forest fire is still raging. The Empire has escaped because, they're not going to bother trying to fix it. They've got what they've to fix the mess. They've gotten what they came for. Luckily, it turns out that the Lost City of the Jedi can literally control the weather of Yavin. Evidently, because again, this is this period before they established some serious continuity and lore. They claim in the Jedi Prince that Yavin was originally a barren world, but that the Jedi terraformed it in order so that the world would be livable enough so that they could establish their hidden library and their lost city. Though I have to kind of question why they would go to all that effort. You would think that a barren world would be an even better place to hide the library. I mean, you have vacuum seals in Star Wars. You can make it airtight. But anyway, that's what they did, and there are controls that can influence the weather built into the Lost City's controls. But they need the code, and there's only so much time before most of the rainforest goes up in smoke. Luckily, Luke, in the vision where Kenobi appeared to Luke, he gave him the code. And my God, this really does tell you that there is an adult can only roll his eyes at these books. Only a very small kid could like them, because let me look up the code exactly. It's like, these are so forgettable, unfortunately, but it's so dumb. Hang on a tad. The code is GE99DI88 FOR00CE. So it's literally Jedi Force. Good grief. But it's the thing where you can imagine like a very small kid, like a toddler, going, "Oh, I get it." And it's I don't know. It is kind of weird because the Davids, they have children. This seems a little too dumb for even for most kids, unless they're again, maybe 5 or 6. Were there kids that young at the time? Were they writing this for them? If so, that's fine. It explains it at least. Now let's see if I'm probably lost. But anyway, they entered the code. The rainforest is saved, and the droids decide, well, Ken, you shouldn't have left, but at this point it's too late. You're already out in the world. Maybe it's time. It's kind of time that you go out there and actually learn something that isn't like just homework from us. And so, you know, it's Ken's dream come true. He gets to be with Luke Skywalker and go on adventures and such. Yeah, like I said, all of the characters are pretty bland and boring. Ken is kind of textbook example of this. He is just the bland kid character. But anyway, that ends the Lost City of the Jedi. We now come to Book 3, Zorba the Hutt's Revenge. Now here admittedly the quality does pick up a little bit, but that's entirely down to the introduction of the third major antagonist of the series, Zorba the Hutt, the father of Jabba. Now, they never mention Jabba's mother, but funnily enough, that's perfectly in keeping, actually, even if unintentionally, with Star Wars lore, because A.C. Crispin wrote the Han Solo trilogy a few years later, and it was she who established the idea that Hutts are hermaphrodites, who can literally change their sex at will. So Zorba basically decided one day to have a Huttlet. He became female, had Jabba, and then just went back to being a guy. Now the thing is Zorba has been... Now why is he never mentioned, obviously? They gotta retroactively explain where on earth Jabba the Hutt's father has been in all this. And it turns out that Zorba, was caught stealing gems on this little mudball planet called Kip, and he was held in prison all these years. So obviously he's not going to be very much in touch with the wider galaxy. And he knows absolutely nothing about Jabba's death. But there's a pirate raid on Kip, and in the confusion, Zorba finally manages to escape, gets back to his ship, along with those jewels that he managed to steal, that he was trying to steal and got caught. And he flies off to Tatooine, figuring, well, this has been a pretty crummy experience. I'm going to go visit my son. And we can, sit on our big couches, eat slimy amphibian things out of tanks, maybe throw the occasional slave girl to the Rancor. It'll be good times. Of course, Jabba is dead, and so when Zorba gets to Tatooine... Let me look up the text for the exact circumstance, because this is kind of crazy stuff. Apparently... Yes, he goes up to the door, or basically demands entrance. And apparently, Jabba the Hutt's palace has been effectively repossessed by the local equivalent of government on Tatooine. Kind of odd when you remember that Tatooine is not exactly very well developed, and most of the government is just various criminal gangs. So how does that even work? But yeah, so basically, Jabba is not, and the reason they were able to do this Tatooine government is because Jabba has no heir and left behind no will. Because obviously this is over a decade before the Clone Wars, and they introduced one of the least popular and least welcome additions, the idea of Rata the Huttlet. Never really liked the concept of Rata. What's this? I guess Zero the Hutt would be Zorba's younger sibling, Zero's mother, from that would be Zorba's parent, thereby Jabba's grandparent? Maybe, but like I said, no one's going to seriously consider the Jedi Prince as canon. Even before the Disney buyout, it was basically retconned out of canon into being just this weird little story that supposedly Leia once told to her children. So even by regular expanded universe things, it's not canon. I just wanted to talk about it for what was supposed to be my first stream, because this is just this weird little artifact of Star Wars media, but I figured wasn't really deserving of like a full proper retrospective. So yeah, I wouldn't be too concerned about trying to work out how this whole Big Mama and Zero and all that works into Jabba's genealogy and stuff. At any rate, At last, Zorba has to go into town to finally find out that Jabba is dead and that Leia is the one that did it. And Zorba, of course, doesn't take it well. And because Hutts are essentially gangsters, Zorba decides, well, I'm going to have my revenge. And thus, you know, the title of the book, Zorba the Hutt's Revenge. So, meanwhile, we catch up with our heroes. Evidently, after the wars with the Empire has been ended for a while, Han has basically decided to take a break from Rebel stuff and is trying to set up a place for himself. He hasn't yet decided whether or not he wants to propose marriage to Leia, but he figures at least he would like a place that can serve as a bachelor pad. God damn it, still gotta find the key. I am completely lost. Anyway, so he's decided to settle on Bespin, not far from Cloud City. He's literally got like a floating house, so he can just float to wherever he wants to, whenever he feels like it. And Han is now planning a housewarming party, him and Chewie. And so we catch up with Luke, the droids, and Ken, deciding to get Han a housekeeping droid as a housewarming present. So they go to a little droid fest on Tatooine. It's run by the Jawas, obviously. They're briefly interrupted by a Tusken Raider attack that they don't really describe because after they lock up, because they all retreat inside the Sandcrawler. I mean, that's the big reason why the Jawas go around in those things. They're basically tanks without guns, and even if they can't shoot back, the Tuskens just don't have the technology to break into those thick hides. And so that's that. They acquire the housekeeping droid for Han. What's her number designation? Again, very forgettable, all these stories. I know like the basic plot, but details just will not stick in the memory. KT-18 is her name. Of course, she's just called Kate, obviously. And so they all go to Bespin. The housewarming party goes well. Lando can't really attend. Because he's busy running things. He's now back to being the governor of Cloud City. And really the only damper on the festivities is the fact that, once again, despite the fact that Bespin is aligned with the Rebel Alliance, the Empire has a toehold there somehow. And they have a big processing facility for the various metals that you can extract from Bespin's liquid core. Because, you know, in Star Wars, you can totally live on a gas giant. You're not going to be sucked in towards the immense gravity well and crushed into the liquid metal core. But yeah, anyway, there's this giant floating barge that just processes materials. Oops, no, I've already been down that way. And of course, because heavy-handed environmental theming, this time the theme is air pollution, because the processing facility just pumps out this brown haze that, I swear to God, the characters literally just call braise. God, that just so stupid. Damn it, I am completely lost. So anyway, the housewarming party just goes well. Well, everyone's having a good time. Han appreciates having Kate to look after the floating house, you know, clean up and stuff, because that's the whole point. But as the party winds down... our heroes, they notice, as it's winding down, Zorba arrives on Bespin, and he basically goes to this place called the Holiday Towers. That was a property that belonged to Jabba. Hold on a second here. And basically, because unlike the rest of the people, well, on Tatooine, Zorba actually knew where Jabba's will was. it was inside this rusty old astromech inside Jabba's palace. And he literally finds the file inside that contains Jabba's will, and it's literally just called GTHW, literally just an acronym for Jabba the Hutt's will. And again, it's one of those things where like you can tell it's to like make the little the toddlers or kindergartners who reading this go like, oh, I get it, it's Jabba the Hutt's will, because you know acronyms are like the Huttms, and so whoever's reading the story to them will like pat them on the head patronizingly and go, aren't you just the cleverest little thing? And apparently included in Jabba's will is a claim on the Holiday Towers, including a private suite just for Jabba for Jabba, which now belongs to Zorba. Because again, in the expanded unit, because before Clone Wars, Rada the Huttlet is not a thing. God damn it! I still gotta find that security key. At this point, I'm just gonna like go somewhere else, frankly. Because I think you'll all be sick of me just running around the same blasted map. Let's see. No, I already went there, did I? Let's check. No, never mind. So yeah. So basically Jabba slithers his way up and basically says, get out of my house, basically my hotel. It's mine. I mean, I have Jabba's will, read it and weep. But, you know, no one's really keen on Zorba taking over. And so Lando decides to, objects to the idea. And Zorba says, fine, how about this? We'll settle this with a game of sabacc. Those who are unfamiliar, sabacc is basically Star Wars version of poker / blackjack. Where is Vijun? Yeah. But of course, you know, Zorba, god damn it, I gotta stop confusing them. There we go. Zorba has this, decides, it's fine. We'll play sabacc. I challenge you to this game for the ownership of the Holiday Towers. If I win, you get out, because, you know, this will be my place now. And basically, Lando actually decides to agree on condition that if he wins, Zorba leaves Bespin and never comes back. So the stakes are, if Zorba wins, he gets to be in charge of Cloud City, and if Lando wins, Zorba has to leave. And again, the books really do Lando dirty here, because they basically make him dumb enough to make that kind of wager. I really do like this speeder bike level. I've actually recently just gotten the hang of it. Whoop. So he plays, and of course Zorba fixes the deck. But it's fixed in such a way that, like, it's got these special markings that only you can only be seen in the ultraviolet spectrum. And of course Hutts can see in ultraviolet, according to the Davids. Don't know if that's confirmed in the expanded universe, but I'm not opposed to that little idea. Oh, that's good. But yeah, they make Lando dumb enough to agree to the idea that he will basically forfeit ownership of Cloud City if he loses, and then makes him dumb enough to not figure out exactly how Zorba rigged the game and basically have him exposed and tell him to get out. But he loses, and at some point during the conversation, he discovers about Zorba's vendetta against Leia. Oh, drat. That was a stupid move. And so he basically, he packs up and leaves. He sends a warning to Han that Zorba is after Leia. Because, you know, vengeance and all that, gangsterism. And what happens is that, of course, there's still the matter of the Empire. Trioculus is still determined to eliminate Ken because, you know, he must destroy the Jedi Prince, or the Jedi Prince will bring about his own ruin, as per the prophecy. he's also increasingly obsessed with the idea of making Leia his evil queen. So, of course, meanwhile, after the... And so they're at the processing barge. And so after the housewarming party, Leia and... well, actually, no. After the housewarming party, Kate, the new housekeeping droid, accidentally trips and falls out of the Han's new sky house, just really telling you just how contrived this all is. And so Luke and Leia go down in like a small custom cloud car to save Kate. But they end up crashing... Well, no, they end up getting shot down by Trioculus's atmosphere barge. Because, you know, they spot them and decide to shoot them down. Because, you know, the Empire aren't exactly nice people. Luke and Kate manage to lose their pursuers in the corridors and tunnels of the barge. But Leia is caught. And so Trioculus decides to try and put the moves on her. Of course, Leia tells him exactly where he can shove his propositions of marriage and imperial power. But Trioculus is just utterly convinced that he will convince Leia that to forswear the side of good and fully embrace the side of evil. Very, very typical stuff. Because, like, it really does also kind of make, like, you're trying to make, Trioculus is kind of your main villain, or at least one of them. You're trying to take him seriously, but, like, the fact that he would be that deluded, I guess it could work. You can sort of scratch what I just said in that regards. Villains can be that deluded. Anyway, I really do love that touch. The slow-mo kills. Anyway, so meanwhile, and again, a lot of contrivances in Zorba the Hutt's revenge. Ken takes Han's other... he basically he's looking around, poking around at Han's other custom cloud car. He, of course, accidentally activates it and ends up getting pulled over by the Cloud City police for speeding. So again, they're making this kid... Like, the kid was already pretty bland, but now they're just making him dumb. And also, they're kind of really reliant on contrivance here. And they're not even, justifying it with the classic thin veneer that it was, the will of the Force. That sort of aspect that KOTOR 2 very much enjoyed ripping in its storyline. Okay, definitely gonna take these guys out. Anyway, so Ken gets taken to Cloud City, and of course by this point Zorba's taken over Cloud City. And so he decides, I need to get Leia so I can kill her. Right now, but now I know that Trioculus wants her. Has her. I know that Trioculus has her. Oh, drat. There goes my bike. But I am going to need... In order to get her from him, I'm going to need to be able to offer Trioculus something that he wants. I'm going to have to be able to bargain with him. And basically, the Cloud City police reports the fact that they picked up Ken, and Zorba thinks in that big, fat head of his, aha! There's my bargaining chip. Of course, first he has to confirm whether or not Ken really is the Jedi Prince. And he does this by basically tricking Ken into eating some drugged food. He brings him out of his cell up to Zorba's personal suite. He plays nice with him, offers him food, and he does it in this really annoying way, like almost like literally, I could go for some milk and cookies right now, wouldn't you? And it's like, God damn it! Ken is supposed to be 12 years old in this story. I don't know any 12-year-old who's that dumb. But anyway, Ken is that dumb. He eats the stuff, and it's laced with truth, and the drugs are a truth serum. And so he basically tells Zorba that, yes, I'm from the lost city of the Jedi. Yes, I'm the Jedi Prince. And so Zorba's like, ha! I've got my bargaining chip. Contact Troculus, tell him I've got the Jedi Prince, and I'm willing to hand him over for a price. Of course, Troculus comes a knocking. And Zorba basically makes his deal, his offer. Give me Leia, and I'll give you Ken. Troculus says no, because he's still dead set on marrying Leia. And Zorba, like most Hutts, does not take no for an answer. Does not take no for an answer. Yeah, goddamn. Well, at least I took one of them with me. I don't think I've done the and so basically there's a brief fight between Zorba's guards and Troculus's guards. But in the end, Zorba wins, and I admit this is actually pretty good. He basically decides to freeze Troculus in carbonite. Because, you know, he controls Cloud City now. He's got the facilities. And that's precisely what he does. He freezes Troculus in carbonite. Right. Honestly, Zorba is the best part of the Jedi Prince. He's really the only good part because he's the one character who's clearly enjoying what he's doing. And again, it's all very hammy and campy and stuff, but because Zorba has a good time, you can actually sort of enjoy his over-the-top evil. And it, like every other, like whenever he's like on top of something, he just laughs, goes ha ha ha. He's clearly having a good time with it. So at least if you're going to have like a campy villain, the least you can do is have him have some fun. Otherwise, it's just there's no appeal beyond anyone older than 5. So now Troculus is Zorba's newest decoration. Oh yeah, a kid being drugged at a stranger's place. Nice. Yeah. You'd be amazed that there are some hilarious bits in some of the Star Wars content that's aimed at kids. For some reason, there is a lot of stuff that is weirdly topical when you look back on it in today's world. Like there's the Young Jedi Knight series, an actual young adult, not series, written by Kevin Anderson, and I think his wife, but she goes by her own maiden name. I think her last name's Modena. And basically, one of the books is about an alien league that is basically that is like anti-human. They're like racist against humans, and it's called the Diversity Alliance. I cannot wait to touch on that one day because I'll just be laughing my ass off at how unintentionally topical this is. Because again, a lot of this is written in the 90s. So anyway, so now that Troculus is Zorba's new wall ornament, in fact later Zorba sticks him in a museum. You belong in a museum, Troculus. Indiana Jones would approve. So Zorba immediately tries to head down to basically blow up Troculus's barge. Because he figures, well, Leia's there, I know that he's put her there, I blow it up, I kill her, my good son who did nothing wrong, my dear sweet Jabba, is avenged. My boy. I'm gonna make her killed for massacring my boy. Oh man, I can just imagine like a Marlon Brando in like, look, would shoot a master Gina Borga. Ho 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 ho. Something like that, something stupid. Look how they massacred my boy. Anyway, Zorba goes to blow up Troculus's barge. So, nothing of value is lost, of course, because, you know, air pollution is bad, and that's the environmental theme of the Zorba the Hutt's Revenge. Air pollution is bad. Luckily, by this point, Han has figured out what's happened, and he basically takes the Millennium Falcon down. He manages to rescue Luke, Kate, and Leia from the barge right before Zorba blows it up. They also manage to snag Ken from Cloud City, and that's it. Zorba basically goes away thinking, I've gotten my revenge. And that's that, all in a day's work for Zorba the Hutt. And again, like, Zorba is the only fun character in the series, and luckily there is more of him to come. He's the only good thing about this. Ah, crap. Almost there. He was almost there. Let's see if the checkpoint... Oh well. So... That's book 3. Now we come to book 4, which is entitled The Mission from Mount Yoda. And it's so named because apparently there is a mountain on Dagobah called Mount Dagger, but apparently after the events of Return of the Jedi, Luke decided to name it Mount Yoda in his honor. Now this actually is contradicted by later lore, specifically by Heir to the Empire, because it's established there that Luke didn't even tell Leia, let alone the rest of the rebellion, about the existence of Dagobah or its location until the events of Heir to the Empire. Oh damn, that guy really did a number on me. So yeah, again, but it's fine. These book series were retconned into not being canon. So that's not long before Disney. So that's not really a contradictory thing. It's fine. But anyway, it turns out that Ken is not going to just get to run around on adventures with Luke. He's got to go to school. And, you know, he's not exactly thrilled with this because literally his life up to this point has been nothing but school, nothing but lessons. So he's not exactly thrilled. And so, and it turns out that for whatever reason, Mount Yoda is not only a secret base for the Rebel Alliance and for Spin, it is the site of Dagobah Tech, because apparently in a single year they've built a technical institute. And basically that's where Ken's going to go to school. It's also the site of... Gotta look this up again, I apologize. Something called... Darn it. The Defense Research and Planetary Assistance Center, or DRAPAC for short. It's basically where the Rebel Alliance develops new technology and weapons for the fight against the Empire. Now, of course, speaking of the Empire, by this point it's common knowledge that Trioculus is, now extra crispy. Well, no, is now in carbonite. Why did I think extra crispy? That comes later. Well, and no, I didn't misspeak. He does, the crispy bits come later. So, so Trioculus is now in carbonite, and basically Kadan, the supreme prophet of the dark side, uses this moment to basically go, well, he's basically proven that he is unworthy. I am now going to be in charge. And he does it by saying, well, I now speak for the dark side. I speak for the dark side, therefore I'm going to be the one in charge of things. Nobody's happy with this, least of all Grand Moff Hissa, who was Trioculus' chief ally, but at this point he's got no choice but to bend the knee, especially after Kadan sends a bunch of his agents to swipe Trioculus from his new place in the Cloud City Museum, where Zorba's put him, bring it to Space Station Scardia, and then just destroy the block with him inside it. Thus, Trioculus is dead. Thus paving the way for Kadan to take over, and the Moffs have no choice but to go along with it. And Kadan has a brand new prophecy. God damn it, gotta read this again. Again, the stories, I can remember the basic plot, but these are just so forgettable. Tormented and frozen alive, the three-eyed ruler commands no more. Never again shall he receive the dark blessing of the supreme prophet. Eyes cannot behold the new ruler, for the ruler is the dark one of ancient times. But from this day forth he speaks through me, and I shall speak his commands to you. Ancient relics of Duro shall you bring to place at my feet and praise me. In this chamber I will then destroy all that is good in the Force. When the dragon pack perched upon Yoda's stony back receives a visitor pierced by gold, then come the last days of the Rebel Alliance. So basically, the thing about Kadan is that his great vice is that he loves to collect artifacts. He's basically like that villain at the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, who just wanted that cross for himself, and you know, Indy's all like, it belongs in a museum. As for the prophecy, the dragon pack perched on Yoda's stony back refers, of course, to Drapak and Mount Yoda, the rebel base there. And how does Duro feature into this? Well, shortly after arriving on Dagobah, an archaeologist from the planet Duro arrives. Now, again, unfamiliar. If you recall the Mos Eisley Cantina scene, or like look it up on YouTube, you notice that brief bit where the two guys that look like Roswell aliens, only they're blue with red eyes, is briefly talking in a corner? That's what those are. Duros. Okay, quick save here, so in case I screw up. And he basically goes to the Rebel Alliance and he's asking for help because the Empire is vigorously looting his planet. Now the thing about the Duros, is that they are one of the older spacefaring races in Star Wars, right up there with humans with like a long tradition. You know, Duros has been a prominent world in galactic politics since, you know, time immemorial, in fact. Dang it, throat is so dry. Anyway, so obviously Duros would be a world with a very long, very elaborate history with all kinds of relics. So the Empire is looting them for Kadan. But there's another thing, and this is actually, and this little bit of detail is actually verified by later Star Wars material, that during the Imperial period, the Empire, because, you know, they don't care about aliens, they used Duro as a waste dumping ground. So again, another bit of heavy-handed 90s environmentalism. And this time the theme is don't litter, essentially. Because basically they've turned Duros into a giant landfill. So even as they're like ransacking the cultural heritage of the Duros people, they're also covering the world in pollution. It's literally just a giant landfill. And so he basically asks for help so that because he and a bunch of archaeologists have been scrambling to like cobble together as many artifacts as they can in an effort to ensure that they will get them smuggled off world and therefore, you know, beyond the reach of the Empire. And I just made that jump. Of course, the rebels agree, but the thing is this: right around the top, shortly after this, he shows the rebels one of the artifacts that he's managed to recover, and it's basically a crown belonging to an ancient Duros king. Haha! Don't let her do it. Yeah, at some point, if I ever figure out how to do like customize the super chats, I can maybe do that, like do a Palpatine do it meme. That's a great idea. Yeah. But it turns out this ancient crown is booby-trapped. Yes, the Neimoidians are a subspecies of the Duros. I believe I have mentioned that in a couple other videos.
These cultists sure know how to cover their tracks.
They're like the only race apart from humans that have subspecies. Which one shall I do? I'll do Coruscant.
Hey, Jaden.
And what should my setup be? I'll do this. Okay, so where was I? Yes. So they're at Duros, they go. So they go to. So they're going to Duros. On the way, though, they are briefly attacked by the Empire. The Millennium Falcon is damaged. Oh darn it! I'm skipping ahead. I apologize. It's a little tricky doing this. So of course, the mission is to go to Duros and basically save all these artifacts, smuggle them and the archaeologists off-world, so that the Empire doesn't get them, and Kadan just can't use them to feather his proverbial nest. Of course, Ken has to go to school. He's not thrilled, but he decides, okay, fine. I can't exactly, gainsay Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, the people that I've admired my entire life. Because, he is literally a Star Wars fanboy, essentially. Nothing wrong with that, but anyway. So he basically decides he goes to, basically just say goodbye, best of luck. I love using force push in this environment. Oh, didn't quite get him. I'm so mean. Anyway, but apparently he got there a little early. No one's there, so he goes inside the Millennium Falcon. And of course, because plot contrivance is the order of the day in this series, he accidentally hits something that causes one of the doors of the cargo hold in the Millennium Falcon to close up, completely locking him inside. So he's kind of screwed there. He's going to be definitely late for class, at the very least. So of course, no one knows that he's there, and they just fly off to Duros. Sometimes, for some reason, I confuse them sometimes. Duros is the species, Duro is the world. In the process, they are briefly attacked by the Empire. The Millennium Falcon's damaged, and it's also the fact that the problems Ken cause by accidentally locking himself up in there. They're not, and that's how they find him. In fact, something goes wrong, and they basically go back to figure out what's going on, and they finally find out, oh, one of the cargo doors is sealed shut for some weird reason, and they basically find him there. They're not exactly happy, but it's too late to turn back now. And the thing about Duros is that because the planet is so polluted, covered in landfills, as I said, most of the Duros now live in these orbiting space stations. I believe there's a Grand with a grenade somewhere. Gotta remember to kill him. And it's there where they have to stop in to get the Millennium Falcon looked at. Of course, the Duros mechanic tells him it'd be cheaper to just get another ship, but of course, asking Han to part with the Millennium Falcon, you may as well ask the man to, cut off his own legs. So they have to take another ship down to the planet's surface, and of course, it's basically a giant landfill. They do find the Duros archaeologists, sort of. Oops, there's the guy. I knew there was a Grand with a bomber. And for some reason, the Grands love to throw grenades in the Jedi Knight series. It goes right back to the Jedi Knight game itself. Oh, drat, I forgot the sniper rifle. Oh well, I can probably hit him. But they discover more than just the oops. Gotta get out of there before that blows up. But they don't just find the archaeologists and all the artifacts. They also find Triclops, the actual three-eyed son of Palpatine. Because remember earlier, the reason that the Moffs denied his existence in part because he's a pacifist and for disarmament, and by Imperial standards that's proof that he's mentally ill, and so they've been spending all this time trying to reprogram him, literally, because it turns out Duros is not just a landfill for the Empire. It's also also got a re-education facility where they're basically trying to brainwash Triclops into being, you know, an evil, mass-murdering Imperial. You know, just the kind of guy that Palpatine would be proud to call his son. Triclops has been refusing all this time, and he's been in a straitjacket. Get this whole time. But he's actually just managed to escape because he's apparently an engineering genius, and he was able to reprogram one of the droids in the facility to basically help him escape. So he links up with the rebels. They're not entirely sure if they can trust him, but for now they kind of don't have a choice. Take your allies where you can get them. Oh, crud. Did not see that coming. Anyways, they do, of course. There's a big battle down there. They help the archaeologists escape. But the weird thing is this: because right now the expedition is being, they run into a party of the Empire because they're basically doing a run. They're getting those artifacts for Kadan, and both Jedgar, the only other named prophet character, and Hissa are leading this whole thing. And at one point, Hissa basically falls into a puddle of acid. Surprisingly graphic for a small children's series. And, you know, he basically does the literally, you know, help me! And Jedgar just runs off and leaves him to his fate because bad guys. And it's here that we sort of learn that the reason, now, Triclops does have a third eye, like Trioculus. The difference is where Trioculus' third eye is in the middle of his forehead, Triclops' third eye is in the back of his head. So he's literally 360 degree. Oh, god damn it. Completely missed that jump. And so basically the story ends with him going back with the rebels to back to Dagobah. And that is the mission from Mount Yoda. We're now coming to the second to last, the Queen of the Empire. So Triclops is now sort of an ally, but the rebels are still not sure whether or not they can trust him. And so they basically decide, we're going to keep you under surveillance for the time being. We're not going to do anything. We're not going to really interrogate you too much, but we're just going to keep an eye on you. Triclops consents to this, reluctantly, but he consents because, you know, he is a genuinely good person, only, you know, bland, just like all the other characters. Except for Zorba. So now, let me actually refresh my memory. Man, let me here. Okay, yes. So what sets the plot in motion is that they're back at Drapak, which is basically the Rebel Alliance's weapons and technology testing facility. And some scientists who are a pair of Chadra fans, nice choice for Alien, they're working on a human replica droid of Leia. Now, the idea of droids that can masquerade as organics is a valid thing and occurs multiple times throughout Star Wars. Though, in fact, funnily enough, this one might actually be the first, because I think this predates Shadows of Empire. Let me just check the date. When did Shadows of Empire come out? Because, like, the most famous human replica droid in Star Wars is Guri, who is the right hand of Prince Shizor. So let's see, Shadows of Empire. When did that come out? 1996. So yeah, this is before that. So this might actually be the very first human replica droid. Like, and of course, you know, it looks exactly like Leia. What the? Pull or push? Bam. Yeah. It's a droid of Leia, so basically it can be sort of used as a decoy when the princess is on missions. However, the human replica droid comes with an extra special feature: laser eyes. One of the few genuinely cool things in this little children's series. Let me just make sure I get this jump right. There we go. Unfortunately, in the middle of the testing, things go wrong, and the droid accidentally shoots one of the Chadrafan scientists through the heart. So the only way to save him is that they need an organ transplant stat. There is one other Chadrafan scientist, but that would mean killing him if they tried to make him donate his organ. So the only way to save this guy is they got to take him back to planet Chad, which is the Chadrafan homeworld. And basically, hopefully they've got a spare heart on ice somewhere. It turns out they do, thankfully. But here's another little bit of heavy-handed 90s environmentalism. So, planet Chad is... They don't describe it too much in this book series, but in the later lore, Chad is mostly an ocean world. But unlike on Calamari, it's covered in little archipelagos and small islands. But what's unique about Chad is that it has incredible storms, and it's because it's got 9 moons. So, one moon causes all kinds of tidal problems. Imagine what 9 can do. However, that's not the reason for the tidal waves in EU Renaissance Star Wars, because according to Mr. and Mrs. Davids, Chad is a massive dairy producer, the biggest in the galaxy, in fact. Which is harvested on Chad from these animals called lactils. And the problem about with lactils is that they produce a remarkable excess of methane. So, yes, you've heard that right. Chad has climate change induced by cow farts. So, yeah, it is that stupid. That ridiculous little idea. It's not a new idea. There have been people saying that cow farts are causing climate change since the 90s, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. Chadrafan suffering from cow farts. So many storms caused by so much methane, so many cow farts, space cow farts. They never describe what a lactil is, but it's clearly meant to be like a stand-in for a cow. I mean, it's just obvious. There's even a point where, like, Leia says, well, the Chadrafan brought it on themselves. If only they'd stopped with their dairy production, they wouldn't be having all these serious storms and weather problems. But, they get the scientists to... is the dairy blue? Yeah, I have no idea. For all we know, it could be. Like I said, I don't think... Yeah, lactils are only mentioned in this book series, and they're never described anywhere. So for all I know, maybe they are the producers of blue milk. We've cracked the code, boys. We now know where the blue milk comes from. Space cows. Damn it, these droids have so much HP. Die already. Whoop. Out. So anyway, they get the scientists safely there. They got the heart transplant. And then, Han gets stuck under a rock fall at one point, and Leia and 3PO have to use essentially a giant laser tank to get them out safely. Him and R2, I should say. And you know, this makes Han take a good long look at his life, and he decides that now's the time to propose marriage to Leia. And darn it, I should have mentioned this because I forgot. It's from back in the mission of Mount Yoda, near the very end, as they're retrieving the artifacts. Excuse me. As they're retrieving the artifacts, one of the Duros gives Han an ancient ring that was supposedly made by a famous Duro queen and given to someone from a noble woman from Alderaan. And basically, Han looks at that and he goes, "Huh. Maybe that'll be the ring I give to Leia." And this is when he decides to do just that, when he proposes to her. Jesus, this droid is just damn unkillable. That or my aim is just awful. Wouldn't surprise me. But the trick is, though, where are they going to go? Well, they've already dropped off the scientists. Instead of going back to Dagobah and rebel business as usual, Han proposes that they elope. Pretty crazy. And he basically decides they're going to go to a place called Hologram Fun World. And my God, for some reason, that is just a lame sounding name to me. I have no idea why, but it is. Hologram Fun World. And as the name implies, the whole gimmick is that everything's holographic. You get to do all kinds of stuff. It's just not real, but they're very good, very ultra convincing illusions. Damn it, is the only way to kill this with a lightsaber? If so, I'm going to heal up first. And so they go there, and it turns out, Lando, if we recall, was dumb enough to basically bet his governorship of Cloud City in a sabacc game with Zorba. Luckily, Lando Calrissian is very good at bouncing back. Drat, my timing was terrible. And now, he is the guy in charge of Hologram Fun World. And he basically decides, oh, you guys are eloping. That's great. I'm going to make sure that you guys have the best time ever. And so basically he makes sure that they get the best possible entertainment for their honeymoon. Because that's basically what this is. Meanwhile, Zorba the Hutt is annoyed with Hologram Fun World, and apparently it's because people are choosing to go there rather than spend money at the Holiday Towers casino that he now runs, because again, he inherited this from Jabba. And so he decides to get a bunch of bad guys together and go, let's just mess up Holiday Fun World. We're going to vandalize it, destroy stuff, that'll show them. And they do just that for a while. But then, while they're doing this, one of Zorba's goons spots Leia. And unsurprisingly, Zorba is none too happy to learn that the woman he was certain he had sent plunging into the core of Bespin is in fact still alive and breathing. And so he decides to kidnap her. And apparently in Hologram Fun World, because illusion is a thing, there is a magician who works there. He's a Bith, so, the guys with the bulging craniums and the black eyes, the guys that played the music in the Mos Eisley Cantina. And by God, I swear I'm not making this up, his name is Bithabus. That just might be the lamest name for a Star Wars character I've ever seen. Bithabus. Ugh. Anyway, as it turns out, one of Zorba's henchmen is a Bith. And since to most not, and it's the classic, to blank all blanks, to person A, all person B's look alike. Finally, the droid dies. And so they basically have Zorba's goon switch places with Bithobus, and then he does the classic, well, I'm going to need to volunteer for my next trick. And of course he picks Leia, and of course Leia walks into this gilded cage for what's supposed to be just a harmless disappearing act. And of course that's when when Zorba's guys cut the power, and Leia is once again a prisoner of the bad guys. In this case of Zorba the Hutt. And you know, he very much is determined to make sure that she is dead. Luckily, Han and Lando are quick thinkers. They find the real Bithobus. They figure out what's going on. And luckily, Zorba's people have loose lips, and so Bithobus overheard one of them saying that Zorba's plan to kill Leia was to take her to the Great Pit of Carkoon and feed her to the Sarlacc. Yeah, I think the door's somewhere around here. Darn. See if I even know where I'm going at this point. What? So of course they pursue her, and apparently they bring along, but then they meet up with Luke and the droids, including that fancy new human replica droid with the laser eyes. Meanwhile, Leia is the captive of Zorba, but then Zorba, it turns out, quickly becomes the captive of the Committee of Grand Moffs, including Grand Moff Hissa. Because, you know, because Hissa, it seems, is still alive. Ooh, I almost fell off. Ooh. Now, if you recall, Hissa was in that acid puddle and pretty much lost most of his limbs. His arms, up to the elbow, are now droid arms. Oh, maybe I gotta push this thing. But unfortunately, the acid really did a number on him. There's some... there, like, literally wasn't enough of even his hips to do fake legs. So instead, he now sits around in like a hovercraft thing, which kind of reminds me of, you know, Professor X from the X-Men. I would have shot Lane in the face, but villain got a villain. Well, of course villain got a villain. The whole point of it is that the villain has to show how evil he is and how in control and powerful he is. Why do you think that the classic villain cliche is to invite the hero to dinner after he's captured them? Oh, there, the next platform, that's where I'm supposed to go. God, I'm an idiot. I mean, look, if you ever really want to talk about the people who say, you know, why don't you just shoot the bad guy? Why do you have to do these things like tie them to the railroad tracks and stuff? That old chestnut. Look up Red Death's speech from Venture Bros. He gives the perfect deconstruction and reconstruction of the whole reason for doing that. He justifies classic villainy. He does it so well. And of course, you know, Clancy Brown is always a great... he's a joy to listen to. Yeah, so like look up Red Death's lesson on YouTube. The clips, I'm sure, are there. There are at least 2 versions that I know of. Anyway... So anyway, the Grand Moffs have captured Zorba because, you know, they're not happy at having to bend and scrape to the prophets of the dark side. And they figure, well, we can't really do anything to them, but we can get revenge on the slimy Hutt who froze Trioculus in carbonite. And then, you know, so they capture Zorba. But here's the kicker. It turns out Trioculus isn't dead. That block of carbonite that Kadan had destroyed is fake. Zorba basically decided to leave a fake of Trioculus and carbonite in the Bespin Museum and kept the real one for himself as a personal possession of his. So the Moffs are ecstatic. Not only can they now get revenge on Zorba, but they've got their leader back. They can now, get back at they can now take control of things. They can oppose the prophets of the dark side. Bastard. And of course, they immediately, free Trioculus from his deep freeze. And of course, Trioculus' first order of business is to kill Zorba. 1, for the carbonite thing, and 2, for trying to kill the woman trying to kill Leia. Because again, he's still hell-bent on making her his queen. Oh, drat, they got me. And so they decide, well, Zorba, you were going to feed Leia to the Sarlacc? How about I feed the Sarlacc a more substantial meal, like a big fat slimy hut? And that's pretty much what he does. He drops Zorba straight into the pit of Carcoon. And of course, immediately, Trioculus is all about his wedding plans. He's got Leia right where he wants her. He's gonna make her his queen of the Empire. And so he basically orders the Moffs to immediately arrange like a quick ad hoc wedding ceremony. Luckily for Leia at this point, Han and Luke and the droids have managed to catch up with the Grand Moffs aboard the Moff ship. Yes, it's called the Moff ship. By God, that is so stupid. It's dumber even than Bithobus. And no, even dumber than Moff ship is what they call a meeting. I swear to you, they call the meeting of the Grand Moffs a Moffrence. Just let that sink in. A Moffrence. Dear God. Anyway. Yes, my wanted poster. Haha. So they arrange they get the wedding in order. But while they're doing this, Luke and Han manage to take out the guards, and they replace Leia with the human replica droid. The one that looks just like her but has the laser eyes. I think you can see where this is going. And admittedly, it is one of the few genuinely cool moments in The Jedi Prince. So anyway, let me go, because I got to pause, because I got to read this bit. The wedding is underway, and basically, Grand Moff Hissa officiates. Reading from this thing called the, what's it called? Yeah, the Dark Book of Imperial Justice. Like, the Dark Book of Imperial Justice. Like, I know the Empire are the bad guys, but most of the Empire don't really think that they are the bad guys. Everybody thinks they're the hero of their own story. Even Hitler and Mussolini thought they were good guys. So, like, why would the people... So, in that case, why would you do that? Why would you make it so obvious that we are the baddies with that sort of thing? But anyway... Hissa reads from the Dark Book of Imperial Justice, and the crazy thing, like the dialogue, he quotes, "We are to witness a momentous event," he says, "the marriage of our imperial ruler to Princess Leia Organa, who shall now of her own free will renounce the Rebel Alliance and offer her eternal allegiance to the dark side. Thus Leia will prepare herself to follow in the path of her father, Darth Vader, and at last become our queen, the queen of the Empire. But first, some fitting words for the occasion. By imperial law, when the Emperor takes a wife, she becomes his property, obliged to obey his every word and bow down before him whenever he wishes a show of obedience." Oof. Man, that is Iran level shit. I mean, I know that the Empire, at least in terms of upper echelons, is pretty sexist. I mean, it's established that Admiral Dalla only became the first female admiral because Tarkin was basically her lover and gave her a lot of support. Because, he's Tarkin. He's like one of the top guys in the Empire. But, Dalla was actually genuinely competent, so it was genuinely prejudicial on their part. The Empire's part, I mean. But anyway, yeah, I don't think even the Empire would normally go for like something that sounds like something an Ayatollah would say. And of course, right after that moment is the moment where the human replica droid that looks like Leia turns around and she literally shoots Trioculus through the heart with her laser eyes. It is both silly and awesome at the same time. The one moment that is like that in the whole of the Jedi Prince. It's admittedly pretty good stuff, and it actually works. Trioculus is killed. The story ends with Trioculus literally dying as our heroes make their escape. It's kind of crazy, and I admit, when I reread this for this stream, I was genuinely surprised. I had forgotten this part of the story. And like, especially for a book that's aimed at little kids, that is pretty ballsy, having the villain killed in such a brutal way. So, you know, credit to you, Mr. and Mrs. Davids. Full credit for a pretty great death scene. And so, of course, now we come to... Oh, but one last detail before we move on to the final book, book 6 of 6. It turns out Zorba survived. The Sarlacc evidently doesn't like the taste of Hutts, and so he spat him out. And Zorba just crawls off into the deserts, or basically laughing to himself and swearing revenge. And I admit, I am glad that we got to see Zorba for one more book. He really is the only good, enjoyable character in this whole blasted children's book series. So, we now come to book 6, The Prophets of the Dark Side. And here we pick up exactly where we left off, with Trioculus dying from literally being shot through the heart. Cue the Helsing abridged meme. Anyway, now again, though, it seems that the Davids don't really understand basic sci-fi physics, because even though the illustration is accurate, it shows like a smoking hole. Well, not the hole itself, but they show smoke rising from Trioculus's chest, so the illustrator at least understands how a blaster bolt works when it hits you. But the Davids literally describe it as Trioculus bleeding to death. And like he bleeds out before the Moffs can like save him in time. Blast it. Lost the screen for a second. And, you know, Trioculus, he actually dies, so, you know, full credit to him. Full credit to the writers. They actually kill him off. But it is the last book. It makes sense that they would, you know, finally get around to that. But before he dies, Trioculus basically warns Hissa that, that the prophets are going to come after them. Kadan is going to come after the Moffs because they've basically betrayed them now. They've sided with their old boss over the new boss. And indeed, this happens exactly because Zorba, as I just mentioned, survived the Sarlacc. He was literally spat back out. He manages to make his way to Space Station Scardia, where the prophets have their abode. And there admittedly is this funny scene where Zorba's just eating at a dinner table with the prophets. And there's even like an illustration, maybe if you can find it, if you look on, if you search it on the internet somewhere. And he's literally just, you know, like he's a messy eater. He's slobbering everything, and the prophets are just looking at him in disgust. Yeah, Zorba really is the only bit of fun in this whole series. And he really is just enjoyable. And basically, you know, Zorba tells him, well, you know, obviously he doesn't know that Trioculus is dead, but he tells the prophets that, you know, Trioculus is back. The Moffs have backed him now. And so, of course, the prophets eventually catch up with the Moffs, because literally they've got nowhere to go. Their would-be emperor is dead. They really have nothing left now. No one is going to, you know, support them. They're caught. They are all put on a sham trial. Oh. And basically, it's a question of just what's going to happen to them. What will their punishment be? The first, like, 3 of the other Moffs, basically, yes, we admit our guilt and we repent, and so they're basically sent off to they're basically demoted. They're stripped of their position and are basically sent off either to do like slave labor or otherwise menial positions in very remote postings of the Empire. Hissa alone remains defiant, and so Kadan decides that you will die for this. Yes. And admittedly, again, right in the last third of the series, the Davids, they kind of start breaking out of the just for little kids mold of the books, because the death that Kadan has planned for Hissa is pretty grisly, and he describes it in detail. First, he's going to starve him. Then, when he's like so desperate that he'll eat anything, he's going to feed him food that is full of flesh-eating parasitic larvae that will literally just eat him out from the inside. Right. And that is pretty wild, I must say. Okay. It's almost like they're trying to like improve in the last third, but it's like a little bit of a too little too late sort of situation. But anyway, Kadan is pretty much, he's fully in charge. The Moffs, Trachis is dead. The Moffs are little more than his bitches. And so he figures, well, all that's left for me to do is collect more artifacts for my collection. But this time it's not just some baubles from Duro. No. He's set himself on an even bigger prize. And that is the great computer at the heart of the lost city of the Jedi. So of course he's got to find it, because again the Empire doesn't know where it is. They tried finding it because burned down the rainforest back in the lost city. The trick then is, how are they going to find it? Luckily, Kadan has a prophecy for that, and and if it doesn't come true of its own, he will make it happen. Hold on, gotta look it up. Oh, speaking of the lost city of the Jedi, Ken and Luke have decided to visit for a little while. So, Ken gets to see all of his old droid friends again. But anyway, Kadan's prophecy is this: when the Jedi Knight becomes a captive of Scardia, then shall the Jedi Prince betray the lost city. And you know how it is with Kadan. If prophecies don't come true by themselves, he'll make them come true. So, easy peasy. All he's got to do is capture Luke, and then basically use that as leverage to make Ken give up the secret. Ooh. There. Damn it. Damn it, that droid shield hurts. Now, there's no sorry to disappoint you people, but in Prophets of the Dark Side, there is no ham-fisted environmentalism. They're clearly seeking to just wrap the series up at this point. Quickly refresh my memory. Yes, the Trial of the Grand Moffs. Okay, yes. So, the Rebels are off on a scouting mission for the Rebel Alliance. For whatever reason, they decided to let Ken tag along. And this is they go to, I forget the name of the planet, but it's like a mushroom world. It's not really worth remembering. It's got mushrooms, giant mushrooms, and these weird tentacle plants that like trap you. Unfortunately, they arrive right at the time as an Imperial patrol. So Luke and Ken are captured. Chewie and the droids, however, are free. So, of course, that's part one of the prophecy fulfilled. The Jedi Knight is now the prisoner of Scardia. And basically, Kadan has to get Ken to give away the lost city of the Jedi's location. And he basically resorts to... we have another case of some creepy guy feeding a kid drugged food. And it's literally the same, only in this case it's like drugged tea. And once again, it's with a truth serum. And again, they make Ken so goddamn stupid to fall for this. Like, falling for it once you could maybe excuse, but twice? Come on, Mr. and Mrs. Davids. Clearly, your two children were too young at this point. You really think that a 12-year-old is that dumb. Anyway, but of course, you know, that's strike two for the that's part two of the prophecy down. Ken gives away the location of the lost city. So now Kadan and Co. know where it is. And so they head off there. They leave Luke in there behind. Luckily, Chewie and 3PO, and R2 were able to get to him. And so they're able to save him. And so now it's a question of whether or not they can get to Ken in time. Damn, these droids are hard to kill. And so they get there. And so immediately they start just deactivating all the droids. They start looting the giant computer. But before this happens, brace yourselves for this one, folks. The big reveal comes. Oh, but wait, I'm getting a little ahead of myself yet again. God damn it. So first things first. There is a false entrance to the Lost City. And at first, Ken tries to lead them there, figuring that maybe he can have the prophets take themselves out. But Kadan is a little too smart for that gambit, and so instead he sends Grand Moff Hissa instead. He was going to kill him with the parasite beetles, but he figures, this'll be good if it would, assuming that it is a trap, and it turns out to be. Because instead, this false entrance is a tunnel that leads directly into a volcano. And so they send Hissa down, and of course, Hissa dies. He literally burns up in the lava. Again, surprisingly graphic for a kid's book. But yes, they start deactivating the droids, they remove all the stuff, and then the big reveal comes. At last the droid is dead. Okay, you ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? Stop me if you've ever heard this one before. Now, as we know, as we've established, Ken's got no parents. He was brought to the temple, the Lost City of the Jedi, by a Jedi Knight. The only clue that he might have to his parentage is this weird half-silver necklace that he's got, and that he thinks he might be a son of Ben Kenobi, because he thinks his name is short for that, Ken Kenobi. But Kadan reveals this is not so. He's got the other half of Ken's necklace, and he basically brings up the files, points to the screen, and says, "Behold your grandfather." And it turns out that Ken is the son of Triclops, who is, of course, the son of Palpatine, making Ken the grandchild of Emperor Palpatine. Screwed that one up, but whatever. I was waiting for that moment. But yeah. Yes, J.J. Abrams did not just rip off Dark Empire with the whole, clone emperor brought back to life thing. He also ripped off the Jedi Prince by making Rey Palpatine's grandkid. Good God. I have to wonder, was this deliberate? Because again, the Jedi Prince is a very rare, very obscure piece of Star Wars media, so I'm not sure if Abrams or the people at Disney Lucasfilm were aware of this when they decided to make the Rise of Skywalker. I have no idea. And I have no... if anybody can find out if that's the case, if there was any awareness I would greatly appreciate it, because man, it would be hilarious as hell if that were the case. Hell, it'd be funny even if they weren't the case.
The galaxy
Drat.
will be ours.
Oh, bad rhyme? That's an insult to rhyming, my friend. An insult to rhyming.
Jedi.
Okay, heavy advance. Oop. But yeah, Ken is Palpatine's grandkid. And the weird thing is also revealed about Triclops is that he's actually is technically a spy for the Empire, but he doesn't know it. Apparently, Kadan had this weird implant inside of his tooth that makes him sleepwalk. And so the rebels notice him rifling through all of their secret files on Dagobah. And apparently, for all that Triclops is like a pacifist and stuff, in his sleep, he mutters stuff about how to make weapons of mass destruction and stuff. Because again, he is an engineering and technological genius. And so that's basically how he's basically like a walking weapons program for the Empire, and that's the reason why they kept him alive, even though they thought he was insane. So, of course, you know, Ken gets to have his basically Luke Skywalker Empire Strikes Back moment, and when he learns who his grandpappy is. But, of course, by this point, Chewie and the droids have freed Luke. They've arrived at Yavin 4. They rescue Ken. And then, because, you know, Kadan didn't quite foresee this particular thing, because, you know, it's kind of established that the prophecy thing is mostly a sham.
How did you get
And
up
they
here?
basically,
Trouble you're
Luke, Ken, the droids, and Chewie escape, and they leave Kadan and the other prophets trapped inside the lost city of the Jedi, which by this point has no more power, and all the droids are gone, and are down. Because they've all been deactivated. Now, and that's pretty much where the story ends. Well, technically, the story technically ends with, you know, Leia and Han getting married. After, you know, how disastrous their elopement turned out, they decided that, you know, they'll actually go for a formal official ceremony. And that's where the Prophets of the Dark Side concludes. Oops. But yeah, the prophets are stuck down there. All those poor droids are, you know, deactivated. And like, what's to stop the prophets from, you know, just reactivating everything to do what they want? Because they're never mentioned again. And indeed, the prophets of the dark side never appear again in any other piece of Star Wars fiction. Except for maybe, like, I think an oblique reference in the book Darksaber to Kadan, but I don't know for certain. It's been a long time. But yeah, that's the end. That is the Jedi Prince series. And appropriately, I'm almost at the end of this level. So, there's not much really to say about this. It's a dumb little kids book series. It's not horrible in the sense that it's like badly made. It's just clearly very juvenile. It's not meant for any audience who is like older than maybe 7 at most. The story is bland. The characters are pretty forgettable, and they have almost, well, the original ones, I mean, and like nobody's got any personality except for Zorba. Like, Zorba's never mentioned again after the trial of the Moffs. He's just disappears off screen. You never hear from him again. The only thing that's fascinating about it is, in hindsight, the reveal of, you know, Ken's backstory. That in fact, his dad got shacked up with a Jedi Knight, and they basically took him to the Lost City before, you know, Triclops was thrown into an insane asylum to be brainwashed, and his mother died, just so that, in the hopes that, you know, Ken could actually live a decent life and not turn out like Palpatine. And in fact, Triclops knew that Ken was his from the first, but he never really mentioned it because he figured, look, if he doesn't know, I don't want to, you know, weigh him down with the kind of family baggage of being my kid and my father's grandson. And in fact, shortly after the conclusion, where they lock the prophets up down in the Lost City, Triclops escapes from Dagobah, and he just he leaves a message for well, actually no, he was brought to Yavin 4, but then he just leaves, and he leaves behind a message for Ken, basically explaining why he kept it a secret, all that sort of thing. But yeah, that is the Jedi Prince, a silly. I can't say it's really bad, but it's not god-awful, because to be god-awful implies a kind of either carelessness or malice. And I don't think you can accuse Paul and Hollis Davids of malice. I think it's just that they were just writing a kid's book, and they wrote it. And I can easily imagine like a very small child enjoying it, but it's just not something that will ever have any appeal for anyone who isn't 7 at most. Star Wars, I've always felt, and I said this with the Droids TV series, even if they hadn't already declared it non-canon before Disney, there was never a chance that I was going to decide to make it to give it a canon verdict, because Star Wars is about more than just kid stuff. It can appeal to anyone of all ages, but you're never going to if you wanted to introduce someone to Star Wars, unless they're 5, the last thing you would ever want to do is have this be their introduction. It's not bad, but it is very, very literally juvenile. It has no value beyond just a fun little romp for little kids. It is just hilarious with the whole, Palpatine's grandkid thing. That's really the only thing that makes it hilarious in hindsight. Though I will say, Zorba the Hutt was a genuinely fun character. I do kind of wish there would have been some way to bring him back. Who knows?
You're coming with me.
And there it is, my first functional Star Wars Should This Be Canon stream. It's been a pretty crazy ride. I just wish that I'd gotten it right the first time and not, had the game volume up so high. But at any rate, I'm kind of glad you guys I hope you guys enjoyed this. I was not nearly as coherent as usual, but that's kind of what happens when I do freeform instead of, like a proper sort of kind of scripted review. There's not much to say on that, so I just hope you guys all have a good day, and may the Force be with you.